Welcome to the GreatBase Tennis Podcast, episode 87. I'm Steve Smith, along with Brandon Flanagan from Boynton Beach, the FM Tennis Performance Center. We're going to interview Gideon Ariel. I'd like to thank Mike Valentine and Mike McLaughlin for organizing this. They're both Bradenites. They were on the Vic Braden tennis staff. Gideon Ariel, he's been called the father of biomechanics, the Leonardo da Vinci of modern sport technology. If you want to run faster, throw farther, jump higher, call on the electronic mastermind, Sports Illustrated. The spiritual father of high-tech sports, workaholic Israeli, Gideon Ariel, got the ball rolling shortly after the 1964 Olympics. For our listener, Gideon was Vic Braden's mentor and partner. Vic used to always talk about his two tennis mentors, the late Jack Kramer and Gideon Ariel. In the 1980s, early 80s, I was living and working at Costa de Casa. That's where Gideon is still living. What an exciting time. At that time, Vic and Gideon, they built the Koto Research Center. There's so many memories. They hosted the U.S. Olympic volleyball team. We'll talk to Gideon about all these things. He hosted hosted world-class athletes. World-class athlete after world-class athlete. Gideon is 82 years young. We could go through so many of the accolades, so many things that he's accomplished, but let's get him on the phone and have him tell his story. I would like to start from his early days in Israel. But let's give him a call. If I could organize my phone. I am not an electronic mastermind.
That goes without saying.
Okay, I'm here.
All right, Gideon. I'm Brandon Flanagan, Steve Smith. So excited to have you on. Appreciate your time.
Gideon, how are you? Great having you on. Thanks so much.
I'm here, no problem.
You know, Gideon, our podcast is a GreatBase Tennis podcast. We have a curriculum. We don't feel like you can really argue with having a great base. But so many of our listeners, we carry the torch. We're proud to carry the torch for everything that Vic Braden did. And Vic Braden used to always refer to you as his mentor. I know you were a partner on so many projects, but yeah, if we could just start with your story. I know it's anytime you need to tell us that time's up, we could come back and talk to you another time, because it could be a long podcast if we start with April 27th, 1939. But tell us about growing up in Israel. I know in my notes here, you went to a kibbutz at age 11, unique education, boarding school, but all the way to sleeping with a discus in your hand for 2 years.
Yeah.
But tell us a little about your childhood and how you got to where you are today.
Well, it's a long story, but I basically live in what's called a kibbutz in Israel, which is in some way a socialistic system, but not a communistic system. And all the kids live together, and everybody has the same rights and same voice, and it's ideal society. And that's where I went to high school. In elementary school, I went in Tel Aviv, which was in the city where I was born. But then in Racim, I started doing the discus. My physical education teacher, his name is Danny Dasa, he's still alive, he's 93 years old. And he showed me how to hold the discus in my hand, and I got attached to it. And didn't stop practicing. And I had a dream in my life. I told my friends, which used to be 4 people in the room, like in a dormitory. And I told them that I have some goals, and they laughed at me. I said the goal was to graduate from high school in matriculation examination, and then go to university and graduate from there, and then go to America and graduate from there, and to break the Israeli records in the discus and the shot, which I did before that. And then I was qualified for the Olympics. So I got to the Olympics in 1960. My record in Israel was for 30 years, 55 meters, almost 56 meters, which is 175 feet. It's not very far in the United States when you have all these big guys, but I'm only 6'1" and was weighing 210 or something. So in Israel, it was good. So I made the Olympics, and that opened to me the whole world. Because right away when I got to the Olympics, there was a coach approached me and wanted me to, if I'm interested in scholarship in the United States. That was a dream. I didn't know even English at that time. So my friend interpreted to me what he said. I didn't understand the English. He told me about scholarship, and I asked, what is a scholarship? So my friend explained me everything will be paid, and they will fly you here and all that. And I said, well, which university? He said the highest. So I was sure I'm going to Harvard, but I ended up in University of Wyoming, 7,000 feet. So that is a joke, actually. But anyway.
No, I remember that joke.
So I came to University of Wyoming, and everybody was talking to me, sound like cats. Meow, meow, meow. I couldn't understand the language. But anyway, I did very well. I graduated with honor, and then I got another assistantship in University of Massachusetts. I got a PhD, and I finished the PhD, and then I found out how much I don't know. So I started again in computer science. And I love the field of biomechanics, analysis of human movement. And at that time, I published few research studies. And one company called me, a Spalding company, and asked me if I can help them to analyze the swing of a rocket. Same thing I had with AMF. And in one of the research studies that I had the rocket handle hang from the roof with a rope, and I have a gun that's hitting the rocket 50 miles per hour to the center of percussion, and measure the speed with the cameras going 5,000 frames per second, how fast the ball going out. That was just on the rope, so the rocket went all over the place. And then I put the rocket in a vice, and again shot it at the center of percussion, and the ball came out also at 50 miles per hour. Didn't change. So that was some study that Vic Braden just couldn't believe it. So he called me one day. I didn't know who is Vic Braden. So also I said that the top spin, because Vic Braden was very, very big on top spin. And with my high-speed cameras, I can show that the ball hit the rocket, and even all the things that happen with the rocket and the hand, like rolling over the ball, it's all a dream because the ball already gone a long time before that. Mm. So he asked me if he can visit me. That was in Massachusetts. At that time, myself and, if you remember, Anne, which is my wife now, we started a company called CBS, which is still working, computerized biomechanical analysis. And we did all kind of research studies. So Vic asked me to visit me. So he came to visit, and I show him what happened. And of course, you have to hit the ball in the center of percussion of the rocket. If it's a little bit off, it doesn't obey this kind of rules. Because the ball is on the rocket between 3 and 4 milliseconds. Depends on how inflate the ball and how strong the string. In fact, when we started the research was on a gut, and then it came to a nylon. So anyway, this company support me. And then I started working with Wilson Sporting Goods and many, many research. If you read my book, it's on the website and it's free. You see all the studies that we did. Do you know about my book? Did you see it by chance?
Yeah. Why don't you share with the listeners how to get to your website?
You know how to get the website?
Yeah, just tell us.
I tell you. Okay, so it's www.arielnet, one word, ARIELNET.com. And you can download the book. It's for free, even though it's also selling Amazon for $90. But don't do that. Just download it from the web. And it tell you all the stories with the tennis college in California. Well, after Vic saw all this experiment, he asked me if I can come to visit him in Coto de Cas. So I went to, at that time, I also worked with Universal Gym Equipment. I invented the first exercise machine. If you remember the Universal Gym Equipment,
Yeah.
I have a patent in it. So it was in Fresno. So that's a whole story by itself. It's in the book. So I went to Fresno, and I told him on the way back I'll stop in Coto de Casa. I thought I got lost because I got into Cook's Corner.
Yeah, I remember that back in the day.
And he told Vic, and I said, Vic, I lost. He said, where are you? And I said, Cook's Corner. I said, no, you're on the right way. So I came to Coto, was nothing there, basically any paved road, nothing. All the places that I live now were all orchards and all these things, snakes, and it was beautiful. I wish it would stay like that.
Oh, those were the great days.
Yes. So Vic asked me what would take to bring me to California, and I said, hey, I have contracts in the millions of dollars already. Not all the millions going to my pocket, but it was worth millions of dollars. I design new tennis racket, design new tennis ball, and I don't play tennis. I never played tennis. But I had all the instruments to measure what happened with tennis racket, not only with the tennis racket. If you remember the study we did on EMG to see how the muscle responds to different strength of the guts and the nylon. Well, I said I cannot come to Coto de Casa. So one day he called me, and he told me that Victor Palmieri, he was the chairman of the board of the whole area of Coto de Casa. And he said he's coming to visit here and he wants to meet with me. I said, okay, I'll come. So I fly and I meet, in fact, Vic had to buy me a suit because I didn't have any suit. Not that I couldn't afford it, I don't work with suits. So anyway, so I had a suit, and we're meeting in a little shopping salon, mall, coffee shop. And Victor Palmieri, Sonny said, how did you do it? And I said, what do you mean? How did you do that? And he threw on a table the Sport Illustrated article. They interviewed me 3 months before. I didn't know it's coming. And at that time, the Sport Illustrated magazine will go on the airplane before it going to the subscriptions and all that. And I had 7 pages on me. It's in the book also. He said, how did you do it? I said, I can do anything. Just as a joke. So he said, what will take you to come here? And I said, Mr. Palmieri, you don't want to ask because if I'll tell you, you'll think I'm crazy. I want a building and I want a truck and I was forced platform. And I know this computer, at that time the computer were $1 million. And he said, do you know what things like this cost? I said, I didn't ask about cost. You asked me what will take me to come here. And Vic sitting there, Vic become red, he just couldn't believe. And Sonny said to me, Victor Palmieri, well, if we decide to do it, it will be a multi-million-dollar deal. If we decide to do it, when you want to start? I said, well, it's Wednesday. What about Friday? So he gave me a hand, shake my hand, and that's how the Coto research started. In fact, the contract is on the net. It was almost a secret because everybody thought it's Vic Research Center, but it was not Vic Research Center. It was my research center, but doesn't make difference. Everybody came. I was Vic slave. Doesn't make difference. So, and I did a lot of work for Vic, and he was great. He was great, and always promote everything. And so that's how I came to Coto de Casa. And then people from all over the world came, athletes and all this thing came to practice and use the motion analysis. And tennis players, we have all kind of tennis players, which I don't remember all the name, but of course Jimmy Connors came there, Lever, and all the guys that came there that said doing underspin, and we showed them there's no underspin. You hit the racket about 90 degrees, then your hand's going down. And with Jim Connor, there was no topspin. You hit the racket, and the topspin started a different way. Anyway, it's all in detail in my book.
No, I remember I was there at that time. We go through the tennis players, but I remember the U.S. Olympic volleyball team training there before the Moscow Olympics.
Yeah.
You had Flo Hyman and the girl named Crockett. There's so many great athletes. But then there's what was amazing to me was there was a girl who had pretty good height, was just a resident of Coto de Casa, And the project, you guys had her as a walk-on, and she was doing great.
Yeah, in fact, the way they came to go to the Casa, the volleyball team, I was the chairman of Biomechanics for the U.S. Olympic Committee. In fact, the center in Colorado Springs was my idea. And I started it with a guy by the name Dr. Dardik. Maybe you met him when he came there.
Yeah.
And also Ras Haj, which was the world record holder in decathlon, and was an Olympian. Bill Toomey, all these guys came. So when I came to Colorado Springs and saw how the volleyball players train, and their coach was Ari Salinger, they were 50th in the world. And, you know, Ari is Israeli, so we talk Hebrew and all this thing. And they live in barricade, like a military barricade. They have one bathroom in the end of the corridor. I told Ari, there is no way in the world that you are going to get any results with this kind of volleyball player. He said, come to Cotton, I'll show you where you should be. So he came to Coto de Casa, and I had 2 condos there. So I gave him 1 condo. He brought the girls there. We start searching for girls because according to my analysis, if you are less than 6 foot tall, you don't have the most advantage. And that's how we got Flo Hyman. In fact, the story with Flo Hyman, Ari was going around to find tall volleyball players in Texas. You see this huge girl, 6'6", walking, beautiful girl. And he go to her and he say, he's only 5'8", I think, Ari. He tell her, would you like to play volleyball? And she said, well, many guys try to pick me up, and nobody got me to ask me volleyball. He said, no. You come to Coto de Casa, you have a car, you have a house, you have everything. And the way we got the money is from Zuno, from Japan. I did a lot of research in Zuno. So one day, that's also in the book. One day I told Mr. Zuno, I met the guy, Mr. Zuno himself in Japan. I did a lot of research for Japanese companies. One of them is Fitness Apollo and Mizuno, not Zuno, Mizuno. So I told him, what do you do if American team will wear in the Olympics new clothes and new shoes? And he said, that's impossible. I said, but if it's possible, what you would do? He said, I would do anything. I said, well, we need $1 million. So that's how the volleyball team was 7 years or 6 years in Coto de Casa. Mizuno actually covered their expenses, and it was amazing. They got the silver medal, I think.
Yeah, that one, the summer of '80 was boycotted, but they climbed. I know it was just huge. I remember the documentation where the athlete Crockett, she improved in vertical jump, like I think it was 7 inches, and like just like with one lesson.
She could be a high jumper. In fact, sometimes Ari would tell her, "Don't jump so high because it takes you so long to get down."
I have some notes here. I remember Roscoe Tanner showing up, and you know at that time he had the fastest serve in the world. I think he weighed 170 pounds. If people want to get on YouTube, there's short clips of I think it was called Future Sports or Future Sports.
Yes.
And you generated 349 pounds of force, and
right.
But that's where
it was amazing. We had the best motion analysis center, biomechanics center in the world, and then administration changed and the politics changed, and the reason I had to leave is when I came to Coto de Casa, I had royalties on the universal gym equipment. I had royalties on tennis rackets, and I had the royalties on the shoes, with before Nike. In fact, I work for the Japanese Tiger. That the head of Nike. What his name was? The head of Nike.
Phil Knight.
Not Phil Knight. His boss. Before him, the guy that started Nike.
Oh, the University of Oregon, the coaching.
Yes.
Bowerman, yeah.
Bowerman. So I work with Bowerman. It's many years now. My memory is not as good. With Tiger, we both were consultants. I pushed the air shoes, and he pushed the little nipple shoes. And they built a prototype, and I built a prototype, and I work. Well, that's the whole story. One day, well, in Munich in 1972, which I was there, that's when the Israelis got killed.
Yeah, the massacre.
I was actually meeting with Adidas, and I work on his 1972 shoes, which the first time had air pockets in the shoes. It was my idea. So we got also money from Adidas, but then a guy meet me. He's from Argentina, Roberto Mueller. And and I was still in Amherst, Massachusetts. And when a guy from Argentina with the name Roberto Mueller, he's young, but that his grandfather probably was Nazi. So anyway, so he came. I had some Israelis working for me. So I say, whatever we have to do for this guy, we triple the price because he has investment in my grandfather's gold shoes, gold teeth. Anyway, it's a joke. So we go into a restaurant after we decide about the project. He starts talking to me in Hebrew. In Hebrew, he said, "Ma nishma? How is everything?" So I couldn't believe he talked English and I hear Hebrew. And I said, "Did you talk Hebrew with me?" He said, "Yeah. I served in the army for 3 years." And I said, "You are Jewish?" He said, "Yes." I said, "Did you hear what I say in the room that I will charge you 3 times as much because you're son of a Nazi?" He said, "Yes, that's why I'm going to do business with you."
That's so funny.
So we started a company called Pony.
No,
and I used to get 10 cents on every pair of shoes.
You have a great sense of humor. I remember, and Vic, obviously, great sense of humor. Going back to Roscoe Tanner, I remember the line, "You can't shoot a cannon from a canoe." But go ahead.
Yeah.
Go back to the 10 cents a shoe. Go ahead.
So the shoes, we started a company by the name Pony, if you remember.
Yeah.
Pony. Okay, I used to get 10 cents of every pair. So in the 70s, you're talking millions of dollars. So when I came to work with Vic, he didn't know my financial thing. But I didn't come to Koto as a poor guy. So when I came to Koto, I bought 2 lots, 2 condos, and we had 2 houses. We had the biggest real estate in Koto de Casa, 2 condos, 2 lots, very expensive lots.
Yeah.
Lot 69 and lot 27, and sold a lot for $2.5 million, and the other one went $2.5 million. And the condos, we sold the condo. Now we have 2 houses, one is empty. But so we came as let's call it in double quotes, rich guys because of the casa, so nobody can tell us what to do. It was very funny. So and when we came to Coto de Casa, when we made the contract, they gave me a contract, and I say, I don't have a boss. I don't have to report anything, and everything that I come with me, the shoes, the machines, and all the thing is mine. Only the money going to Koto Research Center, what we create and in Koto de Casa. Well, I didn't want to lose my business to these guys, so I had the business. So we created like that, and I remember after it finished, the Koto Research Center, it's such a big story. So there was a new president, Boltinghouse. You remember Boltinghouse?
Mm-hmm.
So he come to the office in the research center. Everything working beautiful, and we have the women, girls, volleyball, and he is smoking. And I said, "Sir, you cannot smoke here." And he said, "Who are you?" I said, "Doesn't make difference. You cannot smoke here." So he said, "Who are you reporting to?" So I raised my hand. I cannot show you this on the phone. And I point up to God. So he went back to Vic, and he said, "Who is this guy? Get him fired." And Vic said, "Did you see his contract?" That's it. That was the end. So, in fact, the contract is also in the book, in one of the QR. I didn't put it that everybody can see, so you have to click on the QR. So I had great relationship with Vic. He was a great guy, and I never had one disagreement with him. And we did the future sport and many other sports. I remember one funny thing is I went with Vic to tennis presentation in Chicago. And this is some athletes that he had. I don't remember. I think one. Who is this girl that he actually started her, and she became a great
Tracy Austin?
Tracy Austin. So that was study on Tracy Austin. So anyway, so I'm going there, and at that time, if you remember, the slide machine was a roll. Actually, it's a turn, a plastic turn, and the slides are inside. That's not like today on a digitally. It was all slides inside the machine. Well, and it's a multiple rotating slides. So I'm going on to present my paper, and it's not my slide. Somebody else's slide. So I start making a story on some slides that I never saw before. And it was a great presentation. And Vic is in the other room, peeing his pants up. So this was some experience with Vic. Anyway, I'm just randomly remember things, but there are so many things.
Oh, you had so many world-class athletes. Evelyn Ashford, I've got some names down here. Edwin Moses, Artis Gilmore, Brian Oldfield.
Mac Wilkins.
Yeah, and
I
Al
just
Order.
had dinner with Mac Wilkins yesterday. Al Order.
You did fun things too, like Brian Oldfield. I remember him dunking a 16-pound shot put in the gym.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That was in Koto, yeah.
And then you had Artis Gilmore. He was stuffing basketballs, and Vic was stuffing basketballs, but you'd put a trampoline in place. So when the camera faded away, it was, yeah. So you guys had fun too.
And we had this Mr. Universe, what's his name?
Colombo?
Colombo. Remember Colombo that came there?
Yeah, the guy ran with a refrigerator on his back.
Yeah. So Colombo said he's much stronger. That was the machine showing him. That was the computerized machine, my machine. So I programmed the machine to add 20 pounds to his bench press. Then he started liking the machine.
No, we're on so many different talk shows too. I can remember I was doing a VIP lesson with David Hartman, Good Morning America. Mm-hmm. And I told Vic at lunchtime, I said, he's former pro baseball player. He hits the ball well, but he's here because his wife really loves tennis, but he loves golf. And the next thing you know is you guys had him wired up and he was hitting golf balls. And then it was, you guys were in New York with David Hartman, and it was Gerald Ford and Jack Nicklaus. Cause you had all the data on those guys. There's just so many projects like that.
We had unbelievable time. Unbelievable time. That's why I had to write a book. It's 600 pages. And if you look on the QR, it's another 600 pages. So we had so many experiences. And, now I'm 83. I still can think straight. And I'm still in astrophotography now. I'm with the stars. Try to find my place there.
You have a place in New Mexico. Tell us about that.
What?
Don't you in New Mexico have a special project as far as studying astronomy?
Yeah, we were in Mexico, but I was also in the Mexico Olympics. And I had the only one that took the film. It's actually on YouTube, I suppose. If you want to see Beeman, jump, this is my film, a 16 millimeter film. So I got Beeman,
Bob Beeman, yeah.
Bob Beeman world record. And then I also got in Japan, Mike Powell. I work with Mike Powell also. So it's interesting. And Mike Powell still have the world record in the long jump. So I had fantastic experience with all these athletes, and I always say I'm the mountain and my wife is the brain. And I offered to marry her after she was 35 years my girlfriend.
Tell us about in 1972 the massacre. That was just such a tragedy.
Yeah, I was there, and lots of these people that got killed were my friends. Some of them competed in the 64 games when I competed. So this was terrible. But they took me after it happened and all this thing, and they didn't know if to cancel the Olympics or not, but they didn't cancel the Olympics. And then at that time, East Germany was unbelievable. So they contact me after the massacre, and they asked me if I can come to Leipzig. And at that time, Americans couldn't come to Leipzig, but I had Israeli passport. So at night, we drove all the way, like 8 hours, 10 hours to Leipzig. And I came to their laboratory where they're using all these steroids and all these things. So every athlete had his own chair, his own dish, his own, call it the vitamin pills. Vitamin pills made out of steroids. They didn't know, the athletes didn't. And, and then later on, I published the first study on anabolic steroids in 1972, based on all the things that I saw. And we did the research on that. And
I remember you were on David Letterman, and you called it the Pharmaceutical Games, and that became a little controversial.
Yeah. Well, I had another controversial thing that probably you don't want to hear on the pod.
I think I could guess the thing on black athletes.
Yeah. I wouldn't say what I said.
But no, there was but you could be, without even seeing the athlete, you could tell off the force plate, fast twitch, slow twitch, whether they were black or white.
Yeah, it was double-blind study, and it was 100%. And you look on the finals in the Olympics, you don't have to ask questions, you know. So I'm Jewish from Israel, so I never had any racial situation. I don't even understand black, white, yellow, red. I don't care. In Israel, you know, for me, black skin is like blue eye versus black eye. Well, why they don't say you have a blue eye and you have a black eye? They're talking about the skin. What's the difference between the skin and the color of the eyes? But the guy from Stanford called in with a famous show, 60 million viewers by, what's his name, the guy that interviewed me? The one with the black versus white.
Tom Brokoff, yeah.
And also the other guy was what is the other name? No, I won't tell the story. What's the name of the other story? I cannot tell you the story. And told me, she's sitting beside me, don't tell the story. He told me, I show definitely that the black athletes had a more explosive based on jumping from a table to a force platform and also do the motion analysis. So he called and he said, I will show Ariel that I'll find the white Carl Lewis. Well, I made a terrible answer, and I won't tell you. I'll tell you this when I'm not in the pod.
Yeah, no, I remember with Tom Brokoff, I believe it was him, where you did something in Central Park where you're running with Billy Rogers, and then on your computer you could show how level, the marathon runner. Same thing with Frank Shorter. And what was amazing for I was 22 years old and 23 years old, and all these world-class athletes were coming through Coto de Casa. It was just amazing. Field goal kicker, I remember that the field goal kicker, he was right-footed, and he thought he just needed to lift weights with his right leg. But all the principles, there's just so many things. I remember Vic, you influenced him so much. He made comments like it's the engineering problem that causes the attitude problem. It's not the attitude problem that causes the engineering problem. I one time was a hitter, and you were working with Tim Gullickson, and I was fortunate enough. It was a breakfast meeting, and Vic said, "I'm a psychologist, but forget psychology. It's all about physics."
Absolutely.
And then you said to Gullickson, "I'm going to build a machine that's going to beat Borg, so it'll certainly beat you."
You know about the psychology, what I said. If you got the right psychology and bad biomechanics, and you have a beautiful psychology, you'll be a happy loser.
No, you and Vic, your humor certainly was great because it rings so true. I mean, you guys, to this day, are in the tennis teaching world. Vic was ahead of his time.
Yes,
but he like you, was intellectual. He was just so curious. But no, the whole thing, 3 to 6 milliseconds, 70 milliseconds. What Vic brought to the tennis world, and obviously that's where he considered you to be his mentor, is tennis math. And unfortunately, Vic broke so many myths, but I would say they're all back full circle. That it's such an unregulated profession, teaching tennis.
it's a whole new game today, and also different generation. How old are you?
67.
Okay, you still belong to the old generation. It's okay. But the young generation, the 20s and 30s, they're out of this world. For me, I think in the future they will play on cell phone.
No, they're just. I think another term that came through Vic Braden via your work in biomechanics is eliminate the witchcraft, eliminate the guesswork. Actually, I mean, I have a list here. It was Ken Rosewall, Arthur Ashe, Rod Laver. Jimmy Connors, his serve went from 74 to 101. Mm-hmm. He won Wimbledon after that in 82, and then you guys got a thank you letter from his mother.
Well, right. That's when I say you cannot shoot a cannot have a canoe. It was the Jimmy Connors.
Okay. Yeah, because he's a lefty, but he would collapse to the right. He'd be like a diver on a jackboard doing the what's it called, the jackknife.
But I always feel so. If you biomechanically incorrect in tennis, it's completely wrong. But you can put the ball at a specific spot on the tennis racket of your opponent, you're going to win. So if you can anticipate what the opponent do, and you're not as good in swinging and all the things, but if you can put the ball there, you'll win. Mm. So it's not only biomechanics, it's also how to read the opponent and how to know the faking, so you put it in a place where it's hard for him to get it. So that's a big factor there too.
Could you talk a little bit about center of gravity, Edwin Moses, why he was so good?
Well, Edwin Moses did something that others didn't do. At that time, the coaches would say, when you go over the hurdle, open your legs, because the more you reach forward, the more distance you cover, so you'll be faster. But they didn't know that when you reach the legs forward, your center of gravity is behind the foot, which means you're stopping yourself. And Edwin Moses would bring the leg right inside, down, losing distance, but his center of gravity was ahead of his foot. So it's like he's falling forward. So he never lost speed. And that's how he had the advantage. And it's interesting, when Vic published it with me, we got a call from Moses' attorney. We're not supposed to reveal this information. So that was crazy.
Well, you had people with the sports with more gambling or with gambling. How about with boxing and horse racing? You got some phone calls based on that as well, right?
From what?
With boxing, didn't Muhammad Ali's trainer call you up?
Yeah. With boxing, I did a study on what's his name?
Muhammad Ali.
Yeah, Muhammad Ali, but he went with Liston. I forgot the name of Liston.
Sonny Liston, yeah.
And people claim that it was a fake.
Yeah, the second time they fought, it was like the first round, and you just thought,
yeah.
But it was a jab, yeah.
We had, if you remember, also Ken Norton in our lab in Koto, remember?
Yeah.
And we found out that when you hit with the right arm, the left arm, the highest force is really halfway, not in the end. And if you stretch your arm all the way out, you don't have as much force in the end of the glove. And Muhammad Ali always would have like a karate chopper, boom, boom, boom. And he never stretched the arm all the way in. And then would Liston. It seems like he's not doing the right thing, but he did the right thing, and Liston fell down. And the force was very high. And I remember we put the force platform in the wall in the research center in Koto, and we had different, I think it was Ken Norton, and he would hit against the plate on the wall. And you saw that the force is highest when the when the arm is extended about, I would say instead of 180 degrees, I don't remember exactly, 135 degrees. So you are not straight the arm all the way when the force is the highest, and also it's the fastest to recover. So, yeah, so we did also work on boxing. We did work on all sport, and it's unbelievable how much we did. Nobody even knows. When you go in Colorado Springs now, the USOC, and ask who started this place, they don't even know. That they make some names that came about 50 years later. So,
Gideon, tell us about Al Order. A few stories about him or a summary of his career.
Well,
your involvement with Al Order.
Well, of course, I competed with Al Order, but I was not in biomechanics yet. But then later on, we became friends, and he was already 40 years old. And we analyzed him, and he came to Coto de Casa, and that's when they canceled the Olympics in 1980, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and he started throwing the best of his throws. He worked with me in Massachusetts and in Coto de Casa, and he was throwing world record throws in a practice. And then they canceled the Olympics. And in '84, he came back, and again he would win the Olympics, but then he hurt himself. See, with age, the tendons and the ligaments just fail a little bit. And we show him biomechanics. We actually made him throw on the computer, and he show how he can throw so much farther if you raise his arm like 5 degrees and block with his leg a little bit longer. So I don't remember exactly the detail. You're talking things that happened 20 years ago. But yeah, we helped him a lot, and he became very good friend. Came to visit me in Ann many times. We were very good friends.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
So you wouldn't believe where I'm sitting now. I'm sitting here at the Cardiff of the Sea, and I look outside. I'll put it on Facebook so you'll see it later on. And the waves are so beautiful. And the most beautiful is my wife that's walking between me.
There you go.
She said my eyes completely gone.
With how many? You've been in Coto so many years. You've never moved from Coto. You've always had property there.
Yeah. Anyway, we have a very good life now, and we enjoy ourselves. And unfortunately, the world is going crazy with all these wars, and we don't watch news anymore. and myself, I'm watching the sport, and I'm watching. But even sport is different now. It's all money oriented, and so it's a little bit different.
No, for yourself. I mean, obviously, there was no money in track and field, so you're just doing it for the love of the sport.
No, if in my time, if somebody would give me $1, I would be disqualified. It's against the rules. You have to be absolutely amateur. The corruption started in 1972 when Adidas started put money in the shoes of the athletes and start buying the athletes. And then, of course, with Nike, it's all money. I don't blame them. It's okay. At least they perform better. But, everything is different. I'm still doing a little bit biomechanics. Like in the last Olympics in Japan, we wanted to go there, but we couldn't because of the COVID. But when you analyze the steps touching the ground actually is rebound a little bit. That's with the high-speed camera. Somebody took pictures of 250 pictures per second. It's almost you running on a miniature trampoline. And that's really helping you in advancing your steps. And that's why the performances now are unbelievable. At the time, if you remember, we did a study putting Carl Lewis against, I can't believe it, my brain is gone.
Jesse Owens?
Jesse Owens.
Yeah.
Against Jesse Owens. And we analyzed the velocity at the hip and the knee, which really telling you what the really speed without the ground. And Jesse Owens was as fast as Carl Lewis. The only thing, he ran on a dirt floor and didn't have the right shoes and didn't have the starting block. So
yeah, Jesse Owens, when he ran, the sprinters used to come out with like a garden a piece of equipment from the garden, and they used to kind of dig their own. They didn't have starting blocks.
Yeah. So that's a totally different world.
Well, you've done a lot of things. You've done a lot of things outside of sport too. Tell us a little bit about working for NASA.
Oh yeah, well, we work a lot on NASA. We designed we helped in design the suits for the astronauts. We analyzed them in a zero gravity when we flew the KC-135. I flew in it, which called the vomit comet, because under zero gravity is affecting your stomach and all this thing. I didn't throw up, but many people throwing up. So we had our equipment there, the force plate, treadmill, and we analyzed the astronauts. Also, we analyzed motion of the astronauts going away from the module to do things outside. So we had a lot of contacts with NASA. It was really, really amazing time. I remember in Costa Casa, they would come from Johnson Center in Texas. So the two scientists that came, in fact, one of them was the astronaut, very famous astronaut. Name will remind me, what's the name? He's the first astronaut that was in the dark. Anyway, so they're coming and they're all with three-piece suits and they knock on the door. That's after already I left Kodo. I was in where I am now. And I told them, you cannot come in unless you take the suitcase and the tie out. So they thought I'm crazy. But they did take it off and came in and became very good friends. And Thornton, his name is Thornton, the astronaut. And he gave me his photo that he flew, the first night flight that he flew. So we had a really good relationship also with NASA. We developed from the exercise machine from NASA. It's on the book too. They're still using it. So we had the machine that's another story. Because my machine working on hydraulic. And with hydraulic, you don't have a question of gravity. You just push against fluid. So when I presented to the NASA first time, I think in 1980 maybe, and the first question came, I knew it would come. He said, what if the cylinder leak in the capsule, in space? And my answer was, you eat it. And they all look at me. There were about 10 people in the room and they thought I'm crazy. I said, what do you mean you eat it? I said, we put maple syrup. We didn't put oil in it. And it worked perfect on maple syrup. But my machine is a passive machine, so that question shouldn't even come in. If you don't push, the oil is not coming out. If there is any leak, it only will go out while you're pushing the machine, pushing the bar. If you don't push the bar, it's passive. There's no motor. Anyway, it's still used in NASA. They bought from us like 10 machines. We're still selling our machines all around the world. It's amazing. Our machines, some of them are 40 years old and they're still working because they were designed in NASA basically. So we had an advantage to have amazing technology. We are very lucky. I mean, very lucky. There are many other stories that I can tell you, and many of them I already forgot. At 83, the brain doesn't work the same. But I'm pretty clear. I'm still doing scientific research. I just analyzed the Italian guy that just won in the Olympics, the 100 meters. And his technique, which is amazing compared to the other guys. And that's why he's winning. And I think he will break the world record. We'll see what happens. And some people will say, well, he's not black athlete. Well, right. He's not. His father was black and his mother was Italian. So it's a mix. But so it has nothing to do always with races. You know? It depends on the fiber typing and depends on how you recruit the fiber type. Like another story that when we did the research on anabolic steroids, we were the first one. Many people think that the anabolic steroids help the athletes because they increase in strength. That's not the case. The increase in motor transmission, and that's what recruits the muscle faster. And that's what makes sprinters faster and throwers contract the muscle faster, so the shot going farther, and the discus going farther. So I did one of the first study on anabolic steroids before it was illegal. in the USOC actually. Also blood doping. I did a lot of research on blood doping. So I should be now 150 years old with all the stories you can tell you.
It was Lassi Viren from Finland, right? Where he won the 1500 in Mexico, and then it was referred to as blood doping. They would just train high altitude in the red blood cells.
Right. We did work on that also in Colorado Springs. There's another guy by the name Burke, not the hammer thrower. Another guy. He was the guy with the blood doping. But all this was legal at that time. In 1972, 76, it was legal. So I was involved with steroids a lot, but I didn't advocate it, and then no question that it helped the athletes. There's no question, but I always ask the question today: okay, you're taking anabolic steroids and you perform better. What about a guy that trained 8 hours a day in sprinting and lifting and swimming and developed the muscle to abnormal situations due to the heavy training? What's the difference between that and taking steroids? Not that I advocate, I'm against anabolic steroids, but it's a philosophical question. What's the difference? If you're doing things abnormal, the only one that did things abnormal were the Greeks. The old Greeks, they're just coming out of the blue and they perform with what they got. And then when you start all this amazing training program, like you take the volleyball, the high jumpers from Ukraine, the 20 years old, jumping she's jumping over 2 meters, 2 meter 2. But if you look on her training, it's very abnormal training. It's 8 hours a day training. So of course, she actually won the European Championship just a few days ago. A beautiful girl from the Ukraine. Her name is Sapuchi or something like that. Machachuka. Her name is Machachuka.
Gideon, sorry to interrupt you. Earlier, you had touched on the other skills that tennis players need besides the efficient biomechanics of their swings. And I know there was a project that you were involved with Vic, measuring or monitoring the eye movement of athletes. Cue in on what they were watching at the moment of impact. Could you tell us that story?
Yeah, that was part of the things that what I'm telling you, that the athletes, by concentrating on the right spot, they can perform with their body better, even if the swing itself is not the most efficient. Not only that, you see that the different athletes concentrate with their eyes to different places. Some people to the body, some people to the court. Some people even don't give attention to where the racket hit the ball. They're looking on the movement of the other athlete. So that's not only that. When this research also we found out that sometime when, especially on clay, when the ball hit the ground at 30, 40 miles an hour, it's sliding. And some people call it foul, and some people know now it's electronics, it's much better. But the ball can land inside the court and slide outside the court, still in contact with the ground, like 5 centimeters. And then they call it out or they're calling it in, and there are all kind of controversy. I think today it's more electronics, so they know it better, but I'm not sure.
In terms of the line calls, there's a story about McEnroe being adamant about seeing the ball land in or out. Is that the story that you? Yes.
So we analyze this, but the eye motion is very important. Also, depends on the both eyes. Usually, athletes don't have the right and the left eye exactly the same, so they see a little bit distortion. The same thing happened in baseball. But the greatest athletes in the world, they have less than 20/20, and they are very synchronized. Both eyes are the same. So that's good.
Interesting.
The USTA at one point, they filmed a course for umpires at the Vic Braden Tennis College, and that really came from the research that you and Vic were doing with the eye.
Yeah. Also, we had a guy, eye doctor, that worked with Vic, right? I forgot his name. I worked with him.
Yeah, I know exactly who you mean. He had a lot of different drills to improve the eye of the athlete. It was amazing. Vic, it was twice a year at one time, and then he only had it once, but twice a year you have coaches in, and it was just great for the tennis coaches because the two of you during the early 80s, you presented so many things to tennis coaches, and it all related, it all related to the forehand. I mean, the biomechanical principles are all the same.
Yes.
A Braden theme that we share all the time is the dimensions of the court and physical laws dictate stroke production, no coach's opinion or any unique theory. You brought the science into it. It was fantastic. But this is Brandon, you were listening to Mike McLaughlin, who also worked on the Vic Braden staff, and he was talking about some of the weightlifting equipment he had. And I remember Brandon just said that was 50 years ago. You want to comment on that?
Sure. Yeah, I know Mike McLaughlin was on the podcast, and he mentioned your machines that you developed for NASA to keep the astronauts fit. Obviously, muscle wasting in a close to zero gravity climate. But no, I was shocked. I mean, I'm 37, so I'm the young guy in the room right now. But I'm also in the fitness world, and we have a performance center here in Florida, and we're trying to help tennis athletes improve their fitness as well. I just was shocked that it seems like all this research that you did was 50 years ago, 40, 50 years ago. I know one of the comments that I saw in the book that Steve shared with me, it was basically a collection of publications and articles that you were featured in. And one of the comments was that for a nation that put the man on the moon, it seems so slow to change its athletic training concepts. Could you comment on that a little bit?
Well, explain me exactly what is the question.
Just the comment that I saw that was quoted in there by you was for a nation that's so advanced in terms of having this ability to put men on the moon, we seem a bit slower to adopt these advanced technologically training concepts. Where do you think we are as far as the state of performance and fitness in the world today? Do you think we've caught up?
Well, I think we are backward. I think we were much better. Yeah. But I think people now taking all the easy route using cell phones with models, and when you're using models, never fit a particular athlete. And I think the coaches today don't have the physics background. Yeah. You see, I have engineering degree too, the engineering degree in the computer science when I got it. I had to take all the engineering course. So how many coaches really know the laws of forces and the law of the Newton laws and things like that?
Yeah.
So I think it's backward. But in Europe, they are much more advanced. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And that's why they perform better. But we have few athletes that perform correctly, like Stek Klausner, the shot putter, that pass the 75 feet. And there are some athletes that they know what they're doing. But in general, like you say, including with people are not as motivated. You don't see high school kids train 3-4 hours a day. Mm. Now, so I don't have proof of that. That's just idea that today's generation in the United States, they like a good time and they like it easy, to take it easy, And but I don't have proof of one way or another.
Yeah,
I don't know. In my time, it was really when it was training. It was training. It was like a military camp.
Yeah. No, in the book as well, this collection of articles, you were saying that in the next 20, 30 years, that every machine would be computerized to be able to tell the athlete, the amount of repetitions, weight, the amount of force they're producing. And then I look around and I see there's a lot of athletes that are still, like you said, doing it backwards. They're paying someone to have them flip a huge tractor tire. It seems a little backwards as well to me, but
well, that's the world. How they say I cannot predict the future, but I'm still involved a little bit in that, but not too much. But and I have artists coming to see me. I had this high jumper, Tora Harris, that came with me a long time in Sydney from China. I have people coming from China. And we do some analysis of them. But, to do a really, truly analysis, and already the people that were with me in Koto, it's hours and hours of work. It's not like taking a video of a player and already making a decision what he's doing right and what he's doing wrong. So I hope it will improve, but we'll see. I don't know. I don't know what the future will be, but everything is accelerating in unbelievable as far as science and communication. But I can see in the future, we started it already in Koto to have holograph and things like that. You can train on the table and moving the arms down and up and see more how it's more efficient. Also, every athlete is its own world. You cannot learn from 5 athletes and apply to the 6th athlete. Each athlete has a different biomechanical engine, and they are not the same. And when you're talking close to the world record, it's a whole different story, because you're talking about 1 inch, 1 centimeter that makes a difference. And sometimes it's external. I mean, like in a discus, it could be the right wind and the right time, and from the right angle. So, well, I don't know. I cannot predict the future for sure. I'm happy. I'm happy with what I did.
No, it's amazing.
And sometimes I read my book and I say, who is it?
No, it's amazing. What your journey in the world, your life. What about sports? I mean, what sport do you think is it track and field? What sport do you think is most touched by the world of science, or most influenced by the world of science? I think tennis is at the bottom, but I just wonder what you thought was at the top.
No, I think individual sports are the most biomechanical dependent. I think when it's team sport, you basically, like I don't know if you saw the finals in the North Carolina and Duke and things like this in basketball.
Yeah, I saw that, yeah.
When you play with a team, it's not necessarily talent of one athlete. I don't have to tell you that. So it's a coordination between lots of athletes that might not be very efficient, but they coordinate very well. But of course, you have to know how to shoot the basket. So that's the most important. Like I said, the most important in tennis is to put the ball in the right spot. Same thing with basketball. To put the ball in the right spot, which means a basket. So that's about it.
Yeah. But Gideon, it's great to talk to you. Brandon, you have any other questions?
No, I was introduced to your work through Steve many years ago, and it's been a pleasure listening to you. I want to thank you for the contributions you've made to the world of sport and also to the world of tennis. But it's been a pleasure listening to you. Also reading the many different resources that Steve turned me on to, the research that you've done, and like you, I hope we can continue to make strides to help people improve their performance. For us, specifically on the tennis court. But it is amazing what you see athletes do nowadays. And no, it's been great having you on.
I think go ahead.
Thank you. You're doing a good job. And I think what is necessary is people like you that spread the word and work with the athletes also. Tell them what is the best way to spend their time. Sometimes I used to have parents bringing their kids and telling me if he can be particular in particular sport, let's say in a high jump. And I end up telling them he will be best chess player. It's actually happened in Koto one time. One family with his father was a football player, right? And the guy was a football player, and it was on a program which called the housewife of Coto de Casa. You remember this program?
Orange County, yeah. Orange County.
Orange County, that's right. So one of the housewives had a boy, and her husband actually was a professional baseball player. So she brought the boy to see if he can be like his father. And I say, mate, is his father play chess player? He would be better chess player. Actually, it was on the television. In fact, the whole show, the housewife started in the Koto Research Center. And how it started, I had a guy walking. What is his name? The guy, Scott Dunlop. His brother was the attorney for the U.S. Olympic Committee. So Scott moved to Koto de Casa, and he was very, very successful. Everybody in Koto de Casa was successful. So he went to dinner, and one of the ladies he was with his wife, and other ladies come. So he said the other lady drinking martini with a straw. So he told her, "Why are you using straw?" And she telling him, "I don't want to hurt my lipstick." That gave him the idea to do the housewife of Orange County, and he became a multimillionaire. Now it's every place in the world. So it's a Scott Dunlop. So in the book, you see me with him also, and you see also with the housewife. My wife would never let me go there. Hey, she was my girlfriend. She was afraid that I like one of the girls. I'm just kidding.
With your work, I think the word efficient always came up. And now, prehab and rehab. It seems to me that so many athletes, they see a specialist when they're injured instead of doing something on the front side to prevent injury. Don't you think that the people that are most influenced through science, there's less chance of injury?
Well, of course. But in athletics, especially in track and field, in any performance, you put the body in the most vulnerable position to get injured, because you produce forces which are abnormal in a high jump, in a long jump, in a sprint, in anything, even in a long distance, even in a marathon. You push the body beyond what the physiological made of the body. So preventing injury is very, very important, and especially how you train, with which machine you train, with which shoes you train. So maybe training, you want a little bit more shock absorber in the shoe, so you don't hurt your knees and ankles. And in athletic, when you compete, you're wearing the other shoes, which are specialized for this thing. There are lots of things that we did that's unbelievable. We used to change the shoes to increase performance. I wouldn't tell you which athletes did it, but some of them broke the world record. Also with the hammer, with the hammer, you hold the ball away from your body with a string, right? That you're holding with your hand. Mm-hmm. If you put 40 pounds on the back, so you don't lean as much backwards, so the rotation is over a center, so that theoretically increase the distance of the hammer ball from your body, and you have a better lever. So somebody broke the world record. Anyway,
you had the hammer.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry to interrupt. You had the hammer thrower at Koto. I think he had almost for 10 years. He was number one. He was a teacher, and he's a father of 5 or 6 kids. I can't remember his name, but he threw the hammer.
I was working with a guy by the name Ed Burke. He competed for the U.S. Olympic Committee. So anyway, there are many things that I don't remember, but life going on. What can I say?
Well, I think one thing is with one of our longtime associates, the former student we've known for years and years, Dave Anderson. He has a theme for tennis, the movie Back to the Future. And there's so many things that Vic Braden started doing, with biomechanics. Actually one of the coaches, or I should say a biomechanist who did some work, just speaking at Vic's place, Jack Groppel, bio-mechanics, not bio-mechanics, and bio-mechanics. It just seems like it's gone, some people are trying to be bio-mechanic, throwing out the $14 words, but it doesn't really make any sense. And if people in tennis, I think if they knew the Braden, and Vic would be the first one to say it, and obviously an influence from you, it's not the Braden method. Newton, Galileo were here a long time before us. But if they just knew the nuts and bolts, like Vic, the tennis court's 19.1 degrees wide, and your swing is going 180 degrees, so there's so much calculation. But again, I think that it's been great to have you on as a guest. I think with your Penny in the background, we thank her for helping you out with a few of the stories from the past. But the influence that you had with Vic is, there's so many people that are very appreciative of that. And
I was very lucky to have Vic around me. He was a fantastic guy, no question about it.
Yeah, and it does. People need to go back to the future, and I mean, this work you're talking about, it happened almost a half a century ago. It's amazing.
Yeah.
It's like, as you would say, physics is not a fad. It doesn't go away. But,
no, the Newton equations always will be the same.
Yeah.
Any way you want to change them, it doesn't work.
No, but really, thanks again for taking time. I know our listeners will get so much out of this, Gideon.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Gideon.
Have a good evening. Good night.
Thank you. Good night. Bye.
Flanagan. What do you think?
No, I think he was very much before his time, and I think he said it really well that things are a bit backwards. I especially think in the world of tennis that tennis coaches aren't so adept at the world of biomechanics, physics, and I think especially too in the world of fitness and, like you said, prevention of injury. A lot of that does start with the mechanics of the swing, but then also how they're preparing their bodies for all the training. And so yeah, no, I think he said it there, but he's a legend. I mean, for all the things that he's accomplished.
I think respect, resentment. You'll read where Vic used to say that is that so many people they don't respect, they resent, and but for me, and certainly I didn't really have the scientific background. I used to think this is all over my head, but they hang in there, and but they're both Vic and Gideon are such great communicators. Don't build the bridge out of bamboo. There'll be a lot of cars in the river. Actually, one note about back in those days, Tommy Fye. Unfortunately, Tommy passed away. I mentioned he had a heart attack, but I can remember Evelyn Ashford. She was the #1 sprinter in the world, and Tom Fye comes down and says, Vic, is this the girl I'm supposed to race? Oh man, Tom Fye, what a funny guy. Frank Shorter, it's so good for me to go back and just like, wow, this is who was going through the Coda Research Center. Frank Shorter, on the 18th mile of the Olympic qualifier, marathon runner, he ran a 4:18 mile. The 18th mile. So when we take kids to the track once a week, and the actor Bruce Dern, you can't BS a stopwatch. And, so we talk about, mentioning Carl Lewis, it's Usain Bolt. Mm-hmm. But just, they can measure, this is how fast, it's, 1.5% slower that you're going to be on a dirt track. Mm-hmm. Actually, Dave Secker just sent me something, coach at North Carolina State, about athletes from the past. A gentleman named Epstein, it's a TED Talk. But just the athletes, you think of Jack Nicklaus, Nolan Ryan. I can remember, every sport under the sun, and for Vic, it was not just tennis; it was all sports. Mm-hmm. How can you get better faster, have more fun sooner? with here's a Gideon Ariel pearl. You can see movement, but you can't see forces. You know, just think of these young kids who go out and play, and I'd say just about every kid is hanging onto the racket too tight. I remember sending photography with Gideon and Vic. They pointed out that the racket slowed down slightly because right before impact, the players would squeeze their last two fingers, and they could measure that. But most kids, I go up to them and I pull the racket, and I feel like I'm the motorboat and they're the water skier because they're just clutching the racket so tight.
Absolutely.
They're not loose in the shoulder, and at easy power, that just effortless effort. You know, we do a lot of video work, and it sounds like doom and gloom, so pessimistic. Like almost no one gets the racket below the ball. You know, almost no one hits true topspin, and you know, kids are, you know, they're putting hours in, and the ball's rotating like a frisbee, like a flying saucer. And it's like, you know, the spin of the ball, again, all these things from Braden, but it's such an amazing influence from Gideon Ariel, is the spin of the ball is an indicator. It tells you how you swung. You know, if you're hitting true top, so you went high, low, high, inside out. But if you went back and listened to our podcast on tennis math, you know, I'm the one who spent years and years with Vic, like many other people were fortunate to, but so much of the math, it came from Gideon and his work. But why don't you wrap it up, Brandon?
Yeah, I think for the listeners to go to arielnet.com and download that book for free. There's be a great resource to read into what he did with his career, and a lot of great stories as well. Like you said, all the different world-class athletes that came in and out of that research center, and often imitated, never duplicated.
I think also, too, going back, if people listen to Gideon, they might think, well, that sounds very egotistical. But it's all fact-based. This is what they did. He was a breakthrough pioneer, and I think that ego really, I can't really speak on the field, the world of biomechanics or sports science, but in tennis teaching, it makes no sense to me. It makes no sense for everybody to put in their 2 cents. It's like they're inventing the forehand. I mean, you don't invent the forehand.
Yeah.
You know, I'd like to think maybe 5% of what we share is some original ideas, but it's just study. And yeah, people need to go back and, you know, Vic with his books, but then with Gideon Ariel to go to his website, like you said. But podcast number 87.
87 in the books.
Thank Mike Valentine and Mike McLaughlin. Mike still lives in Koto, and he met with Gideon and asked him to take some time and talk to us. But yeah, take it up a level, go to his website. But again, thanks everybody.
Thank you.
Good night. Adios, amigos.